Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we look at how a radical view of reality can catalyze personal transformation. The only way to do it these days, given current world events, is to look out into the cosmos and realize that we are it and it is we, and the human race in the midst of all of our turmoils, all of our challenges, all of our dysfunctions, is embarking on the most important event in the entire history of our species to embrace our cosmic destiny as stardust, living, intelligent, compassionate stardust, along with the entire rest of the cosmos. Before we dive into that realm, I just want to fill out a little bit the implications of what's going on as humanity embraces its cosmic destiny, because we're in very exciting times. As you all know, I'm here in Washington, D.C. I am right close to the White House and the Capitol building and the Supreme Court and the Senate and House office buildings. I've been working on UFO, UAP disclosure for the last 18 months. I've been immersing myself in a variety of things through Ubiquity University, training programs and experience circles and ET and religions projects, and all kinds of work to prepare people, to educate people about this moment in time. When I started in the fall of 2023, it was all about hardware. Does the US government have retrieved alien craft? Does the US government, does the Russian government, does the Chinese government, the Brazilian, the Indian, the Mexican, Canadian, do governments around the world have retrieved craft and retrieved alien biologics, as they're called? That was the conversation. And then the US government passed the legislation in December of 2023 saying, yes, it's all true, mandating all government agencies and contracting corporations to turn over everything they discovered since 1945 to the National Archives. And then there were a series of congressional hearings where very high-ranking intelligence officials like Lou Elizondo and others, Admiral Gallaudet, basically stated they're here. And as Carl Nell put it, there is now zero doubt. And then people said, well, yeah, but what about somebody who's actually met them and touched a craft? Then we'll believe it. Well, lo and behold, up pops Jake Barber, Special Forces, unbelievable story. Jake Barber was the guy that was so highly trained. He was on what they called the red team that would skulk around to the blue teams and try to obstruct and to sabotage and upset the blue team. Extraordinary man. And he was tasked to start retrieving technologies of unknown origin. So he began to move around UFOs that had either been brought down or had landed or something had happened. And in the course of doing that, as he was carrying a UFO, an unidentified anomalous phenomena, all of a sudden he realized that the UAP was taking over his consciousness as he was flying the helicopter. And he says, And you can see the interviews with tears coming down his cheeks. He says it was the most beautiful feeling I've ever had in my life. It was the sacred feminine. And she's been protecting me ever since and told me my mission is to tell the world what I know. So he started a company called Skywatcher that is now officially, publicly working with the three-letter organizations of the US government, Department of Defense, on not only retrieving these craft, but through psionics. This is a new term that's surfacing. So everybody take it in. Psionics. Psionics. Psionics from psi, mind. Psionics. Through remote viewing, the Central Intelligence Agency discovered way back in the 1960s that remote viewers properly trained could go inside alien craft and communicate with the ETs. So what Jake Barber and the Skywatcher team are doing is just that. And they're bringing into the public domain that not only is this true, but we humans can communicate with them in intelligible ways. And in fact, we can call them down. So one of the things that we're doing with Jake Barber in 2 weeks, on the 23rd of February, we're having a psionics summit, Ubiquity University, Humanity Rising, and several other organizations like the Transdimensional Mapping and Albuquerque UFOs, which is the largest UFO group in the world. The California Institute for Human Sciences are convening a 2-hour program on psionics with Jake Barber and Russ Coulthart and Richard Dolan and some of the leading lights of the UFO field to begin now this next phase of humanity's entry into the cosmic moment, and that is extraterrestrial awareness and communication. So right at the moment when we're about ready to destroy ourselves, the extraterrestrials are coming down. And all of you have heard about, since mid-November to now, thousands and thousands of orbs have been appearing all over the world. And thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have been seeing these orbs. And what the ETs are saying is the situation on Earth has become so critical that they're taking the next step in letting us know as gently as they can, we're here, pay attention. And according to Courtney Brown and Bertie Jaworski and other ET communicators through remote viewing, right now the orbs are a little bit small, maybe the size of a SUV. The ones that are coming later this year, because 2025 has been designated by them as the year of disclosure. So this is one of the reasons why we have been convening so many programs on the extraterrestrial phenomenon, because it's what's up for humanity. In fact, I believe it's the critical ingredient that will determine whether we survive or not. Because the consciousness that produced all our problems won't solve the problems. That's why we can't solve them. We need a new frame of reference. And that's coming through consciousness, it's coming through the extraterrestrial phenomenon, and it's coming through all the mental telepathic capacities that we humans have had all along and are now beginning to rediscover, because that's what's necessary to communicate with other species and communicate with the extraterrestrials. It's a very exciting moment. It is the worst of times, but it's also the best of times. And living in the best of times while it's the worst of times, in my view, is the only place to be. So, in that spirit, I want to welcome back two people that we've had a number of times on Humanity Rising. One, my very good friend and co-founder of Ubiquity University, Peter Merry, who's our Chief Innovation Officer and has been an extraordinary fountainhead of creativity from the very beginning of our relationship. I can't even remember, Peter, how many years ago it was. Who will introduce our resident cosmologist, Jude Currivan. So Jude, Peter, thank you so much for joining us, and I turn the program over to you.
Great. Thanks very much, Jim, and great to be back, particularly with Jude today. Um, yeah, I mean, it feels like over the last couple of months that things have really accelerated around interest in consciousness, not just the UAP issue, but those of you who've been tracking the telepathy tapes, for example, where they've been interviewing autistic non-speakers and finding out that these people who the doctors said to their parents, there's nobody home, that these kids actually are communicating telepathically with their parents, with teachers, with each other, finding they can access solutions to the challenges they're facing just from the field, put a hand on a book and absorb the information. And they don't understand why we're kind of communicating in this clumsy way with our verbal language when you can just kind of communicate that way and transcend all your languages and things. And as I'm sure some of you know, Telepathy Tapes podcast knocked Joe Rogan off #1 on Spotify for a day. And then Joe Rogan not only mentioned them, but then got Thomas Campbell on his show, one of the first Monroe Institute folks, and spent 2.5 hours talking about consciousness. And it had 1 million views in the first day. So it feels like something is really bubbling in the human consciousness at the moment, this realization that there is definitely something beyond this material reality, which our Western culture has kind of emphasized for so long. And then you've got Cambridge University announcing that the word of last year was manifest, because young people were in the social media. They were all talking about intention and manifestation, and of course there was a lot of rubbish there as well. But the fact that that was surfacing as a sense that there is a way we can work with consciousness to co-create our reality, is highly significant. And then Jake Barber, who Jim was referencing, I was listening to his interview with Coolheart, and at some point he was saying while they were doing craft retrieval, they were working in parallel with another team who were researching the relationship between consciousness and technology, because they realized that it was that these craft, that the alien technology was actually driven by consciousness. And I realized that what we've been doing with Weird Experience and the technologies we've been developing, like this light behind me that you'll see kind of fluctuating in response to the field of consciousness during our session, is actually a way to practice our interaction with consciousness and technology. So all of this stuff, as we know, is kind of co-arising at the same moment. When these breakthroughs happen, it's not one scientist somewhere who gets it, but suddenly a bunch of people download it at the same time. Like it matures in the field, and suddenly, boom, it's there. And it feels like we might be reaching that tipping point, which is pretty exciting. But as we know, break down, break through. So both are accelerating. Depends where we put our attention, and I know very much where Jude puts her attention. So that's very, very, it's always very heartening and uplifting to hear you, Jude, talk about the work you're doing. And at our last Science and Consciousness event, we have an annual Science and Consciousness event with Ubiquity and Weird and Broughton in Yorkshire. Jude came and gave a talk, but also shared the film she's going to be sharing with us today. And it just fitted perfectly with both the researchers on the one side and the practitioners on the other, which is always the integration that we seek during the Science and Consciousness event. So, Jude, I'm going to hand over to you, and I understand you're going to kind of say a few words about the film and the context for it. I should also say, Jude was my major advisor for my PhD, so we've known each other for a while and helped me give birth to evolution theory, which reflects all the stuff that Jude is going to be talking about, and another example of how things are kind of manifesting and percolating through the field into reality. So great to have you with us, Jude, and over to you for now.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Jim, and great to be with everyone again. And I couldn't agree more. This is the time. Everything now is moving into this convergence, this opportunity. And Jim talked earlier, and perhaps before we came online, actually, about our cosmic destiny. And I've been talking about this for some time because it seems to me that this is the moment of our midwiving into the potential of what we can evolve to become. And that's really why 16 years ago, I had the sense of creating a film. Because, we know that a picture tells worth of 1,000 words. And so although I love to write, I've so enjoyed actually taking all that the film shares in terms of what Peter has just shared, that, we're realizing now, we've always realized it in terms of mystical and spiritual and universal wisdom traditions, universal traditions and indigenous teachings, that our universe isn't dead, it isn't meaningless or purposeless. It is a living, sentient, meaningfully existing, purposefully evolving, unitive, multidimensional entity of universal mind. So, when the word consciousness and manifestation and intention are all coming into play, it's because that is the nature of reality itself. And yet we've believed, we've been taught a very different perspective. So it seems to me that even though I wanted this film to be released 16 years ago, I am so grateful that its perfection of timing is now, because it's being released at a time when, as Jim said, our extraterrestrial families are realizing and coming to the view that disclosure is now. Indigenous teachings are telling us that the time to wake up and remember that we're inseparable is now. The time when we're understanding that mind and consciousness aren't something that we have. They are literally what we and the whole world are, is time. And when we're appreciating that it's universal mind and consciousness that is individuated in its cosmic hologram of manifestation, and therefore individuated within us as microcosmic co-creators, that it's time. So that's the sort of the background. We've produced the film so that it's 14 minutes, and the rest of today will be, I hope, about questions and points of view and explorations of its message. But it's intended to be an introduction. It's intended to be a calling card. It's intended to be an invitation to this adventure of remembering who we really are and who we can evolve to become. It's free to view, to share, to use in any way you'd like to. It's subtitled on YouTube. It's subtitled already in 18 languages, from Arabic to Ukrainian. 3 more languages are being posted in the next week or so. So more and more, we want it to be available to everyone who can access YouTube. But also on our wholeworldview.org website, we put a glossary of terms, because some of these terms, like Peter was saying, are unfamiliar as yet. As Jim said with psionics, this is an emergent language. We're moving beyond quantum. We're way beyond quantum. We're into information. We're into all of these other weird and wonderful ways that are describing the deeper understanding and experience in unitive reality. So we put together a glossary of terms. We put together some invitations to experiences and some potential questions and an educational blog that everybody is invited to contribute to. So that's the background. And now I'd like to share a radical guide to reality. Everything breathes. People breathe. Plants breathe. Planets breathe. our whole universe breathes. Our universe began to breathe nearly 14 billion years ago. Instead of the implied chaos of a Big Bang, it began as the first moment of a wonderfully fine-tuned, beautifully ordered, and ongoing big breath. Like a baby, it was born as simple as possible to be able to grow and vitally to evolve. As its big breath continued, with space expanding from its minuscule birth and time flowing from past to present to future, its evolutionary journey from simplicity to complexity and ever greater levels of diversity and self-awareness led from hydrogen and helium to stars and galaxies, and eventually to planets and plants and people. The hydrogen in the water of our bodies and in the waters of our planetary home Gaia is only a few minutes younger than our universe. All else that makes up us and Gaia was created in stars billions of years ago. Our story is the story of our universe. Yet what really is the reality of our universe? And who really are we? Instead of a story of separation, scientific breakthroughs are now discovering and converging with indigenous and other wisdom teachings to reveal that our entire universe exists and evolves as a wholly unified entity, with everything interrelated and interdependent with everything else. Despite its appearance of solidity, though, physical reality, while real, is actually 99.999999999% no thingness, and its material appearance isn't its deeper nature. Evidence at all scales is discovering that its energy and matter and space and time are its appearance, not its deeper nature. Showing that its appearance emerges from more fundamental and non-physical levels of cosmic intelligence and causation. Underlying causation and all-pervasive cosmic intelligence that, expressing itself as information, is the fundamental substance of our universe. Information, though, that isn't expressed as random data, but vitally as meaningful information that literally informs all we call reality. Meaningful information that's expressed in complementary ways as the energy and matter, space and time appearance of our universe. And as we are learning from the study of black holes, our entire universe is a vast cosmic hologram its wholeness existing and evolving in the interdependent complexity of its informed and diverse parts. The alphabet of its informational language is the simplest possible, with only 2 letters, 1 and 0. Just as in our digitized technologies, they're combined meaningfully to inform and make up all we call reality, from hydrogen to stars to planets and plants and people. Like our digitized technologies and holograms, universal digitized information is pixelated. The scale of our universe's pixelation, though, is more than a trillion times smaller than our best high-definition technologies. As small as to the size of an atom is to our entire universe. Named after Max Planck, one of the greatest pioneers of quantum theory, from the minute pixelated Planck scale, the holographic appearance of our universe arises. The relational and dynamic informational patterns and processes of its wholeness are being discovered at all scales of existence, from atoms to planets to vast clusters of galaxies, to all of space and time. And through many fields of research, from physics, chemistry, biology, and planetary sciences, to studies of collective human behaviors, all with their complex appearances underpinned by so-named holotropic attractor patterns of information. Instead of a great object, our universe is being revealed as a great informational and finite thought in the infinite and eternal mind of the cosmos. We don't have mind and consciousness. We and the whole world are mind and consciousness. While we are each unique, we are inseparable from each other, our planetary home, and our entire universe. And we are each microcosmic co-creators of its magnificence and evolutionary impulse. We are family members of its vast communities of life. This is who we really are. Our unified, conscious, and essentially living universe not only meaningfully exists, but purposefully evolves. Its emergence not random, but continually and informationally guided. By around 5.5 billion years ago, interstellar clouds of molecular hydrogen, stardust, and ice had evolved to provide all the complex combinations of elements to birth planetary systems and enable biological life to emerge. The shockwaves from the explosion of a nearby star then caused such a cloud to gravitationally collapse, not in chaos, but into a protoplanetary disk, whose harmonically resonant orbits of its emerging planets surrounding a central protostar would further evolve to form our Sun and solar system. Vitally for us, Gaia's place in our planetary family is perfect. in the habitable zone, not too hot and not too cold, but just right. And as a water planet, to become a home for the evolution of biological organisms. Gaia's sentience is, however, embodied not only in her biological organisms, but also throughout her planetary rocks and minerals, waters and atmosphere that form an interdependent Gaiosphere that has nurtured the continuing emergence of complexity for over 4 billion years. From the very beginning, unchanged ever since, and the same throughout all Gaia's biosphere, the DNA and RNA genetic code has informationally enabled their intricate evolution from the simplest cells to the most complex ecosystems. Crucially, informational DNA is not passive, but responsive to signals, and so able to communicate and express its genes in different ways, with biological evolution driven not by random mutations, but by proactive and beneficial responses and adaptations. Meaningful informational processes guide emergence, and with collaborative relationships of organisms, ecosystems, and the entire Gaiosphere, enabling not only gradual change, but sometimes radical and rapid transformation. Yet we've forgotten that we're inseparable from each other, Gaia, and our whole universe. As a result, we've come to a tipping point as a species and as a planet. To evolve to greater complexity, organisms throughout Gaia's long story have learned to cooperate. To survive and thrive, we can't go on behaving as we have been. We can learn to come together to be a planetary species and stewards of our planetary home as Gaians. This is our moment of choice. Based on the evidence we now have, to remember that we're inseparable. And realise too that our own conscious evolution can play a vital role in Gaia's own evolutionary progress and purpose.
This is who we can remember we really are. This is who we can evolve to become.
Wow, great. Thank you, Jude. If we were in a room, I'm sure there'd be like thunderous applause from the hundreds of people watching, not just here, but on YouTube and Facebook and everywhere else. So beautiful, beautiful job. It reminds me, something I always remind myself of, and anytime I'm giving a talk or anything, I'm like, remember that, at the moment we are the Earth, like watching this film. So that we are the Earth listening to itself. We are the Earth, an expression of the Earth, trying to work out what is the next step in our evolution as a conscious planet. And is this human experiment, can we maintain it? Is it possible? How are we going to work it out? But it's not us and the Earth. It's like us as Gaia, us as the Earth evolving like this. The Earth produced that video. Right.
Yes.
Through you, and it's that kind of, it's so sometimes hard to maintain that perspective, but I find when I'm able to, everything kind of, okay, you can kind of relax in a way into this bigger being that we are. So apart from anything else, like, beautiful reminder of that for me. But I know that you do this, not just for information or awareness raising, but really because of the implications that adopting this perspective has for how we show up and how we act in the world, and that you are carrying that forward in a lot of the work that you do. So maybe before we jump into kind of questions and discussion, be great to hear a little bit about how you're taking the whole perspective forward in very actionable contexts in your work.
Thanks, Peter. I think that for me, this is vital. It's when we do wake up to remember, as the film and Jen, our lovely heroine, says at the end, to remember who we are and who we can evolve to become. Then what? Because remembering that, being aware of that, then for me, it's about love in action. And I know we've got Connie and Andrew on the call today, and they talk about the trust frequency a lot, and it's wonderful. And I more and more speak of not just a living universe, but a loving universe. So for me, this is, what does this mean for us in terms of love in action? I just want to come back as well before talking about the sort of the transformational opportunities, is going back to what you and Jim were saying earlier, because it seems to me, having had ET experiences, a multidimensional communication since I was 4 years old, that this timing is because there are a number of us waking up to this remembrance that we're inseparable, that enables the vibrational frequency to be at a level with all the turbulence, with all the breakdown and breakthrough, nonetheless, to offer us as a species and as a planetary species, as Gaians with Gaia, that they can come to our frequency because we're able to rise to their frequency. And therefore, that engagement is a resonance. And for me, that is why this is happening now, because this is that invitation by the whole universe to enter into this next stage of our adventure. The other thing I'd want to say as well, before going into the practicalities, is the film, and I talk about, instead of a big bang, the first moment of our universe has been the first moment of an ongoing big breath. Space has expanded ever since, as time has flowed forward. Our universe breathing. So I sometimes talk about space is our universe breathing, time is our universe thinking. But the other side of it, this notion of a big breath, and I'm not decrying the science of how we started in a very minute way, but the evidence is that it was exquisitely fine-tuned and ordered and purposeful and meaningful, is that the vastness of our universe, when we think of the big breath, to realize that that big breath breathes through our little breaths in every moment, that our relationship with our universe can be incredibly intimate. And that when we breathe in the big breath and the evolutionary potential of our entire universe, we can meld it with our own little breaths. And as we breathe out, we can be breathing out in service to that loving, living, evolutionary potential that we're all part of. So I think a lot of this on a personal level is also about not just understanding this unitive, multidimensional, conscious perspective. It's that experience. I think what you do so brilliantly, and the weird community do so brilliantly, is bring that into deep experiential aha-ness, and that becomes the embodiment of this unitive perspective. So I just want to say all that, and then very briefly to go on. Yes, a lot of my work at the moment is the then what, and for me it's about, when we see the world with new eyes, we choose differently, we behave differently. And I've been reframing what is often called a metacrisis to a metamorphosis. And literally, when a caterpillar goes into a cocoon and a chrysalis and then breaks down into a nutrient soup, and then the emergent butterfly is formed, the butterfly literally sees the world through a new consciousness, through an evolved consciousness, and literally through new eyes. So when we do that, and the film's there for a calling card, an invitation, an opening of a conversation in many fields that I'm involved with. So, for example, transforming economics from a neoclassical economics, which is all about Newtonian physics, materialism, separation, exploitation, to a regenerative, unitive economics of partnership, right relationship, reciprocity, in alignment with living systems, where living system is the whole universe and our planetary home. Transforming education, so that, you know, one of the wonderful things we've been doing is doing focus groups of 13 and 14-year-old young people, because the film, we say, is for young people and truth seekers of all ages. But for those young people to go before the film and say, I'm not sure if I have meaning, I'm not sure I have a purpose, to come out and say, I know I now do have meaning and purpose. I know I belong, and I'm hopeful, and I know what I can do now to move forward. And so education is vital to this. And then all other aspects, you know, a world of pieces, fragmented into pieces, conflicts are natural behaviors, but a world of wholeness, a unitive perspective, a unitive narrative, a loving world is a world of peace, naturally. So I'm working with peacemakers, peace builders, from every level, of the highest level of the United Nations and governments and organizations, to everybody, because this isn't a scientific revolution. This is truly a revelation of who we are and who we can become. And so it matters to every single one of us.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, the you know, talking about Elizabeth Sartoris, who passed away recently, that metaphor that she really got into the world around the caterpillar, the emergence, you know, of the butterfly from the caterpillar, and tying into Irvin Laszlo's kind of non-linear leaps of emergence and everything. Suddenly,
absolutely,
you know, you know, in all my talks, I've always mentioned that in the very first book, Evolutionary Leadership. And then I always kind of said, but we don't know what that next is going to be, because we can't tell from where we are. So it's like
exactly.
You know, somebody who trying to explain the internet to a monk in a cave transcribing the Bible, you know, but now I feel like we might be starting to get an inkling of it. You know, if it's this kind of consciousness based, when we're hearing both the way the kids in the telepathy tapes talk, we hear the experiences of people like Jake Barber interacting with the ET and UAPs. And what gives me a lot of faith in those stories is that they all say it's all infused with love, unconditional love and compassion. And the kids, you know, they say, you communicating the way we do telepathically, you can't communicate deceitfully. They say it's all just got to be truthful. There's a frequency filter or something that stops the negativity or the deceitfulness coming through. So there's both the kind of inner qualities that this is going to generate as we all lean into it and become more exposed to it. And then there's the kind of technological implications and our abilities, I think, to be able to fairly gracefully solve many of the challenges we're facing. On the one hand, because we'll be able to download the solutions, but on the other hand, the way we implement them will be guided by the grace of the natural intelligence, rather than us trying to make a plan from our rational mind, you know, for the next 3 years when everything's moving so fast. So
absolutely, absolutely.
Many.
I agree. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. And excuse me, for me, it's about attuning and aligning with that evolutionary impulse. And I think what this shows us is we can show up and get out of the way of that. We don't have to, as you say, Peter, we don't have to say we're doing this and this and this. All we have to do is show up, get out of the way, and serve this incredibly impulse that naturally is flowing through us. And, you know, for me also, it's about learning from Gaia. Gaia's sentience, Gaia's intelligence, universal intelligence is so wonderful and so vast and so intimate. Yeah, when I wrote the story of Gaia, I think I've told you this story. I fell in love with slime molds. When I wrote Cosmic Hologram, I fell in love with bacteria and viruses, and then I did a whole next level of falling in love with slime molds. The level of incredible sentience that is all pervasive at every level throughout our universe. This shows us, as you say, how we can just open our consciousness, because we are individuated microcosms of universal intelligence. We are its microcosmic co-creators. We can learn so much. We always, we tend to think we have to sort of impose ourselves. What I'm seeing us now, and I've had this conversation with Elizabeth, is that as a species, we're like just about to start big boys and big girls school. And we're at the school gates, and we can be all excited. But as you say, at this stage, we have no idea what's coming. But what an adventure and what an invitation.
Yeah, it's exactly that. In Dutch, we have this expression to be in the kinderschoenen, which means literally to be in child's shoes. And it completely feels like that, and all the research we've been doing in consciousness and the development of the weird technologies and things, all we know about this light is that it responds in brightness to coherence in the field, people's intention and people's collective experience. We linked various data structures to the color, but we don't know what in human experience generates that data structure and therefore that color. But we do know people's stories that they can sit in front of this weird light and they can make it change to the color that they want. In fact, someone was telling me a story about his daughter the other day who red and blue, that was too easy. So let's do a tricky one, orange. And she went to get orange from the fruit bowl, put it down next to the light, and the light went bright orange.
I love it. I love
it's
it.
just, but we don't, we're kind of, okay, well, that's your experience. We don't have the understanding yet of the science or all sorts of various theories, but of how that works. And that I think is also hopeful for the younger generation, because it means there's a whole world to explore. If you just look at it from the material perspective, well, we've kind of discovered most of the continents and the seabed and a lot of the stuff. But consciousness, is suddenly this whole pristine domain in a way that we still have to discover and find out the implications of, and the practices around, and how it works, and all of that. So it's pretty exciting.
It is very exciting. And yet we do have some clues. And we also have thousands of years of folks who have been, mystics on this journey, often very lonely, into this depths. I mean, one of the great inspirations for me when I was very young, I suspect it was for you too, was the Vedic tradition of ancient India, who talked about the nature of reality in this way that neither you nor I, nor I guess anyone on this call, was being taught at school. And yet when I was guided and really guided to find the Vedic tradition and writings, it was like, oh, this is how I'm experiencing it. Oh, this is, I felt I was home. I felt that I had that understanding that went so far before us. And now that's coming forward. Indigenous teachings. We have so much we already, if we hear and listen to, is available to us. And so, as you say, so much more to explore and discover.
Yeah. It's funny, we had a group of CEOs come in recently to Weird Experience, where we, have all the Princeton equipment. And one of them was a Cambridge physics graduate, very kind of skeptical to start with, and sat in front of one of these computers trying to make the line move up or down the screen, and was succeeding. And then he thought, oh, I'm going to trick it now and make the line go down instead of up. And of course, the line went with him, and it completely blew his mind. And it was maybe a 2-minute experience. But that experience of his consciousness interacting with technology in a wireless way made him challenge his fundamental assumptions about reality. And at the end of it, he was saying, why wasn't I taught this at Cambridge? And so, it feels like that's the opportunity in front of us now, is because people realize there's something more. They feel there's something more. But no wonder the culture and the education system isn't providing the architecture, as it were, or the infrastructure for people to be able to, explore that.
And you're absolutely right. And so we're working with educators around the world to bring a radical guide and all the wraparounds into educational environments. I mean, we say it's for young people and truth seekers of all ages, so it doesn't have to be in an educational capacity. But, most of the translators who did all of the translations, we have all, the 17 languages plus English, free of charge. We all did this pro bono. We all did this as a labor of love. Our teachers. The Ukrainian translator is a teacher in Kyiv who felt this was so important for her students that with everything going on there, undertook that work to enable that to be the case. So I agree with you. And I think that, we're welcoming, we've got a blog coming on the website to welcome everybody's perspectives on this. And just to say that the main website that shares all of this is not my personal website, which is more a little landing lily pad. It's the wholeworld-view.org website, because we have lots of resources, as you know, that support all of this.
Great. Well, yeah, make sure we direct people to that as well. So let's see, has anybody got any questions for Jude, things of the comments or questions on the film or her work? If you do, drop them into the chat and we'll open up the conversation a bit further. Elizabeth asking for the website. Yeah, whole world.
Hi, wholeworld-view.org. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And that's perfect, Peter. Thank you. And if maybe Georg or someone could go to YouTube and just Google A Radical Guide to Reality and copy and paste the link for that, then everybody has free access to view, to share, to use in whatever way.
Someone dropped that into the chat earlier on, but it'd be good to put it in again. Here, Chris asks, what's the most valuable lesson you have learned in your life? Whoa.
I think we've already referred to it, Chris, actually, that love is the most foundational force of the universe. I'm actually working with an incredible philosopher, researcher, AI genius called Grant Story on what we're calling the science of unitive love or soul. And we're bringing that in to really encourage people to live love and show the evidence that when we love, our entire being expands. Love is the message that, as Jim said earlier, love and compassion and kindness, and are the lessons and the invitations that our ET folks are saying to us. So that's the most important thing for me, and I think for all of us.
I mean, and if we kind of expand on what I was saying earlier about, we are the Earth, we are
absolutely
it right now. Beyond that, we are our galaxy.
We are galaxy, we are our universe. Exactly.
And in that case, for one as the galaxy, then this particular limb of the galaxy or little tiny planet in the galaxy is attracting something it's needing at the moment through the ETs coming in with their care for what on earth is going on here. How can we help you out? How can we help shift the frequency? As in the recognition of we're part of the same oneness, basically.
Yeah, and absolutely. And Bonnie has put into the chat how to explain the evil that also exists. I'd say, Bonnie, that as a human species, what we've done is we've undertaken a journey of progressive individuation. And that's been a really key aspect to bring us to this point. But as we've gone through that journey, we've misunderstood differentiation for separation. And when we move into a mindset of separation, and I would say the illusion of separation, I think that's when what we might call evil comes into our behaviors, because we don't see the other as a reflection of ourselves. We don't live from the premise of Ubuntu, I am because you are. And we move into, in many cases, perspectives and choices and behaviors that are fear-based. Because I would say that, that's the other end of love. If love's about wholeness, then fear and all that comes from fear is about separation or perception of separation. So I think that is where evil, what we call evil, has entered our consciousness. But as we remember that we literally are inseparable, as we literally remember who we are, and that we are at the very core of us, at the very foundation of us, if our universe is a loving universe, then how can we not at our very core be loving beings of its sentience? And yet we've forgotten and moved into this sort of perspective. But now we're remembering, it seems to me what's really key, that individuated journey has brought us to a perspective that we can remember we're inseparable and know that we are also unique, that it's a both and. And with the universe, whose whole journey of unity has been into ever greater levels of individuated self-awareness and differentiation, diversity and complexity, our journey has just been a natural progress to the point that we're now at, it seems to me.
Yeah. So that, that diversity, that sense of separate self to start with is a positive thing in the sense that it gives us the awareness of the differences and appreciation of them. But when we lose the context of the interconnected web that we are all in, then it becomes fragmentation, right, rather than diversity. And that's where we get into this I, other kind of third person thing. It's fascinating, actually, what we've discovered, and people are reporting in their interactions with the consciousness technology, like the light, is that you can't take a linear perspective and try to make it change a color. If you treat it as an object, an it doesn't respond. If you entangle yourself kind of I, thou, or as a one, then it starts to play with you. So it's actually almost training us in the kind of consciousness to get out of, and it's literally, people say it's not like there's time between the light's response and something that happens in me. It's like it's co-arising at the same moment. And I think there's something in this whole kind of consciousness perspective that's emerging that's going to take us beyond both linear time, separate space, really into, I guess, presence and everything at the same time, in a way, or will put us in a different relationship, let's say, to the kind of linear experience.
I think that's how I would suggest we consider it, because what the best understanding that I have that's in A Radical Guide to Reality, but also in Whole Worldview and my books and all the rest of it, is that within space-time, there is a flow of time. We started 13.8 billion years ago, that first moment of the big breath. As space expanded, time has flowed ever since. So there is a flow of time within space-time. And as a cosmologist, as a physicist, I know from 65 years of study that without that, we wouldn't be here having this conversation. And there is a causality and there is an evolutionary flow. But it's a both and. At the same time, because our universe manifests itself as what I describe as a cosmic hologram, it is non-locally whole, which is why all of the consciousness, supernormal, psionics, phenomena are natural, because it exists and evolves as that innate wholeness. So it's a both and, which I think is it's genius. It's cosmic genius.
In the spiritual traditions, that's the integration of, on the one hand, the absolute.
Exactly.
Experience of oneness, and on the other hand, the relative. And sometimes spiritual traditions go all transcendent and it's only the absolute. But the non-duality is when you hold both, right? When you hold relative as one at the same time.
Exactly.
So it's very easy to say and not always easy to do.
I'm glad you said that as well.
There were some earlier questions up here. How can global climate change shift the conversation to the transformation Jude speaks of? How do we use the crisis and opportunity to engage folks?
Interestingly enough, I was invited actually to write a very sciencey article for a quantum consciousness edition of Progress in Biophysics and Molecular Biology about a year and a bit ago. And I talked about this, and I talked about, universal evolutionary impulse and the necessity to actually evolve to planetary systems in order to enable the environments to further develop biological organisms and the complexity of consciousness within them. And I have had something like 25 invitations to be a keynote speaker at international conferences, primarily about environment, regeneration, climate change. So what I'm doing is I'm showing up with these researchers who, in their own research, certainly the young ones, are really understanding the interconnectedness and interdependence, and also taking the perspective of living systems beyond the biosphere to the Gaiosphere and beyond. So there's a lot of openness now, especially in the younger researchers, to take this understanding into their own work. And I think everything we can do to share the news and to lift up and link up and lift up together in this it all helps the way forward.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of the challenges, Cuff also points to, you know, obviously now there's a lot of concern around Trump, and he's also throwing in the complexities of how people relate to the idea of wokeness. And he says, my sense is it has a lot to do with the fear of the unknown. So how do you tie in the kind of, you know, was it Paul Ray said, things seem to be getting worse and worse, better and better, faster and faster. How do you tie in the worse and worse that we seem to be, you know, many people seem to be experiencing at the moment? What's Gaia doing, you know, with the emergence of Trump?
I think that really comes to me in the reframing that I'm suggesting or offering, of reframing the meta crisis, because the meta crisis has come about because essentially the illusion of separation that we bought into, and all that we've behaved as a result of that, whether it's politics, education, governance, our exploitative technologies, all the other. Really, all of that comes from a mid-19th century scientific paradigm of materialism and separation, that even with the insights of quantum physics and relativity physics, the deeper understanding that they were offering was pushed to the side, and everything was focused on technologies that just continued the materialistic paradigm forward. So we're where we are because essentially of that ongoing journey. We're now waking up, and we're waking up, it seems to me, because first of all, we're part of a universe that itself is evolving. We're part of a planetary sentience that Gaia herself is evolving. We cannot be separate from that. And therefore, that evolutionary impulse is also flowing through us. So, yes, it appears to be the worst of times, but also that breakdown, in a way, has to be part of the metamorphosis. Because just as a caterpillar has to break down its way of seeing the world, its way of being an extractor in the world, for then in that nutrient soup, for the imaginal cells of the emergent butterfly to start to form, and they are forming. I mean, what you and I both know, and I suspect the folks on the call know very well, and Jim knows this very well, a lot of what is breaking through, we don't see in the mainstream media. And yet it is breaking through. A lot of what is breaking through, we don't see necessarily playing out at the heads of government, and yet it is breaking through. And so I think for us, and you and I wouldn't be here if we didn't have an innate trust in this evolutionary impulse, and choosing to serve it. And that is our choice. What do each of us choose? Do we choose to be part of a problem, or do we choose to be part of a solution when we don't understand the destination of the solution, but just in our hearts know that this is a better way, that this offers us at least authentic hope? And I think that's what I feel. So when I see people, when I am with people who are sharing the film, and I'd love to see perhaps if some of the folks on today's call would like to put just a word or two in the chat about how the film makes them feel, because that's what we're finding from focus groups. We have grown men crying. We have folks saying, I've always known this. I've always been told something different, but I've always known this at the depth of my being. And you saw that at Broughton too.
It's the recognition, isn't it?
It's the recognition.
Thing that's, you know, we felt but hasn't been echoed in the world around, in our kind of materialist world around us. And when people do get, you know, I have it in workshops as well. You can say the simplest things, and people are suddenly affirmed in something they deeply know.
Yes.
And it's deeply moving for them, because everything else is reinforcing a different paradigm, and they're kind of sitting with this inner knowing and this inner sense without getting any affirmation of it from the world around them. So I mean, that's apart from, you know, just that effect from the
just that effect. And you know, the film is, as I say, it's a calling card, it's an invitation, it's an opening of a conversation. One of the other projects I'm involved with is seeing how it might be taken to a much more expanded series of episodes on a major streaming platform that go into not just its science of life and love and evolution, but also what does that mean? So we take on what that question is, you know, remembering who we are and who we can evolve to become, takes it then into the other areas that, you know, we were sharing about what can it mean for young people in education? What can it mean for the way we approach healthcare and how we relate with each other? So there are many projects underway, and they're all about how can we serve this understanding into experiencing and embodiment. And I think that's what our extraterrestrial friends and family members are inviting us. And they're not here to save us. That is, I'd love Jim's perspective on this, but in my view, my personal experience, that's not what they're here to. I think they recognize that we're at a level now where there is an opening and there is sufficient folks who can be open to help everybody raise to this higher level of loving vibration.
Yeah. You know, one of the other most powerful pieces, I think, about Elizabeth's story with the imaginal cells is that when those imaginal cells in the kind of body of the caterpillar start to emerge, you know, they're the cells imagining the future form of the butterfly. Exactly. And initially they're attacked by the immune system of the caterpillar because it sees them as alien. And they keep battling on.
Yeah.
I think many of
and
us
it strengthens them.
that.
This is the point, it strengthens them.
And it's when they connect up. It's when the imaginal cells actually connect that then the caterpillar's body and immune system gives up and dissolves and then becomes the food for those imaginal cells and the butterfly to go into the future. And that's such a key one because it, you know, the immune system is kicking in like now. It's feeling, you know, the old system's feeling threatened.
It is. And the fighting of the dying caterpillar actually makes the imaginal cells stronger.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to, before Jim comes in, I'd love to tell when Elizabeth passed over, I wasn't aware of it. It was in early December, but I knew she was readying to, and she consciously chose to. And one morning, this is December in England, right? So it's very chilly. And she always used the metaphor of butterflies. I looked out of the window and there was a butterfly just outside the window. But it wasn't just any butterfly. It was a brimstone butterfly. Now, Elizabeth lived on Big Island in Hawaii. So she loved volcanoes and she loved, you know, the whole brimstone and all of the other. So the fact there was a brimstone butterfly outside my window, and then I heard that she'd passed. So I just felt it was her way of saying,
middle of winter.
I'm off. I'm the middle of winter. I'm off and I'm flying.
Oh, sweet. Yeah.
I didn't know that she had passed.
Yes. She passed in early December, Jim.
Very
peacefully. And we're having a memorial celebration for her this coming Saturday. So
Well, I want to, since you had mentioned my name and was interested in my perspective on the ETs, I think that as I gather it, both perspectives are like two sides of the same coin. There is a maturational readiness. We now have technical capacities we haven't had before that give us the capacity to leave the planet, to probe the outer solar system and beyond. And we're about ready to self-destruct.
Yeah.
And I think that what I've been gathering from lots of people we've had on Humanity Rising who have talked with thousands of people who have had ET experiences is they're actually communicating both. That we're ready, and we're doing some serious damage to ourselves and to the planet. And
Oh,
we just need to
absolutely.
stop.
Absolutely.
We just
Yeah.
need to stop and get on with it, particularly our nuclear weapons and our ecological, let's call it degradation that we're doing with wanton abandon. And
Yeah.
so I just wanted to bring that in because it's a both and, I think. Does
I
that make sense to
wholeheartedly
you?
agree. Yeah, wholeheartedly agree with that. I must admit, I'm a both and girl by nature. I always worry a bit if it's an either or, but when it's a both and, I
Yeah.
can settle in and go, absolutely. Jim, just to respond to someone in the chat who asked if my understanding of consciousness includes God. For me, everything is God. There is nothing that is not God, regardless of the name we give to the infinity and eternity of cosmic mind, whether it's God, Allah, great mystery, great spirit, or cosmic mind. Everything is cosmic sentience, everything is cosmic mind and consciousness. So again, this sense of inseparability is that by whatever name we know the infinite and eternal, it
Yes.
is that. It is
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the end, we're in a radically monistic cosmos. It's all one.
Absolutely. A friend of mine,
There's
Max
no
Bellmans, talks
outside.
about reflexive monism.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But you're absolutely right, Jude. And I think that tradition that goes back east and west
Yes.
into deep antiquity, but was lost with the rise of the Abrahamic religions, is
Yeah.
now returning. And I think its return couldn't be soon enough and fast enough
I agree with you.
for us to get on with the next phase of human development. And within this context, I want to ask you um, a little bit more explicitly. And, Peter, I'd like your comment too, because you're doing all the Broughton weird stuff. Where does the extraterrestrial phenomenon fit into your cosmological view of the universe and the current evolutionary inflection moment of humanity?
Mm.
Because as I said in my opening remarks, I think it's synchronistic, it's
Mhm.
intentional,
Mhm.
and they're being catalytic by
Mhm.
design to take us to the next
Mhm.
phase by
Mhm.
essentially saving us from ourselves. How do you view it, Peter? How do you view it?
Oh, you want me to start? Well, actually, building on what kind of came through when I was talking to Jude earlier, and the point that we were making at the very beginning around everything in the galaxy being made from the same stuff. Basically,
Exactly.
if we all came from this very tiny, whatever it was, pinprick at the beginning, and as quantum says, well, if it's been entangled before, it stays entangled. So if it's all entangled and it's all connected, and we think of it as the galaxy as a living organism, not just Gaia as a living organism,
Absolutely.
the whole
Absolutely.
galaxy as a living organism, then this living organism of the Milky Way is drawing to this organ of itself, that we call planet Earth, the intelligence, resources, information it needs for this little organ to evolve to the next level. Now, in our experience, that
Great
is
image. I love
that is
this.
the
I love
that is
this.
the extraterrestrials, but
Yeah.
It
not extra
absolutely.
anything. If you think about it,
No.
they're actually intragalactic. Think about it that way. Yes, they're
Yeah.
not, but they're part of this living organism, which is the galaxy, which is kind of like our body sends the blood cells to, fix a
Yeah.
wound. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. The galaxy's responding and seeing if we can
Yeah.
save this
Earth has a
planet.
boo-boo called humanity.
Yeah, and like
Absolutely.
Jude says, maybe it's not saving, but it
Yeah,
is.
yeah. Yeah.
That's how I view it.
But sending
I
healing energy to that part of
Yeah,
itself that is
Mhm.
wounded and
Mhm.
has become
exactly,
dysfunctional because of what you're saying, Jude. We've broken out of the
Mhm.
monistic understanding that it's all one.
Mhm.
exactly.
And yet it's the time now that we are remembering. I mean, we were
Yeah.
talking before we came online, Jim, about some information that's just been released to Nature. A couple of years ago, there was a robotic capture by, you love this, Osiris Rex was the name of the robot, who captured some material from an asteroid called Bennu. And that asteroid is probably 5 billion years old, so older than actually Gaia. And the material that's being captured has all of the prebiotic, complex biology, organic molecules that then go on to, when in planetary homes, continue to complexify. So it's discovered that all 4 nucleobases of DNA were on Bennu. But also, when we go back even further, we now spectroscopically know that those interstellar clouds, those molecular clouds that film refers to, are like miniature chemical laboratories of complexity before planetary systems even form. And all the spectroscopy is showing that the same amino acids that form carbon-based life on Gaia and DNA on Gaia were there 5.5 billion years ago before our planetary system was formed. So these pervade the galaxy. We also know that even earlier than that, there was a big sort of push for planetary systems to come into being. So my perspective is that between something like 7 to 5.5 billion years ago, there was a whole birthing of planetary systems throughout our galaxy, able to further develop biological life forms. We also now know from looking at exoplanets, there are more planets in our galaxy than stars. We're finding more and more and more. And we're also finding vast amounts of water. So we're finding water-based planets that are in habitable zones around their stars that have the capacity to evolve complex biological life forms. So how could there not
Exactly.
be
But you know,
all of these communities?
I hadn't taken in before, Jude, that there are more planets than stars.
Yeah.
Whoa,
absolutely.
that's a lot of planets.
It's a lot of planets. And what we're finding is that they have characteristics. I mean, Gaia is very special on many levels, but nonetheless, we're finding more and more Earth-like, or at least habitable zone type planets. Now, not all of them may be able to evolve the complexity of biology that Gaia has, but many of them, I'm sure, will be. And so I'm so looking forward to having more conversations with our extraterrestrial, and I, like Peter, don't want to say extraterrestrial, it's just our galactic friends.
We got to come up with a
family,
new word.
Our galactic family, and really hear their story. Because about 10, 15 years ago, I was in a meditation group, and we actually were debating this pinch point, a breakdown and breakthrough, destruction or evolution. And we opened up to our galactic family on a telepathic level. And I asked, how did you get through this pinch point? Did you experience this pinch point? And the answer came back, yes. And the answer then came back, we learned to understand, experience, and embody unitive awareness. In other words, they'd forgotten and they remembered. And in that remembering, they were able to consciously evolve.
By the way, thank you so much. And I reminds me, I saw an article and I don't remember where it was published, but it may have been, it's recent, within the last month, that they've discovered that between galaxies, there's sort of a cleaning. These little units sweep through, and they're in charge of the recycling. Shall we say?
I love that.
You're in charge of recycling, but it's between galaxies.
Yeah.
What do you know about that? Because I just saw the headlines and I sent it to a few people, and then I was overcome by events. But that's like what you're saying. Not only, and this is to Peter's point, not only is everything there, the amino acids all over the place, the water is all over the place, but all these galaxies and super clusters of galaxies operate as an organism just like us, with recycling capacities. They're cleaning
absolutely
and
recycling
as they go along.
And supermassive black holes at the centers of galaxies help to stabilize. But there's just one more point that I just wanted to mention about DNA. DNA, it was right first time. The DNA in us is the DNA in every biological organism, not just on Gaia, but we now know that it's the same nucleobases that are found in molecular clouds before planetary systems. It was right first time. Studies have shown that it's a million to one more efficient in terms of holding information and being responsive to environmental co-creative progress than any other organic molecule of its type or similar type. It literally fractally folds 4 times in less than the blink of an eye. It never gets tangled. I mean, it's extraordinary.
What is this?
The DNA molecule. We could do
DNA
a whole.
molecule.
It's just extraordinary, and yet it was already there before planetary systems came into being. You know, if we take whatever 8 billion folks living on Earth and we stretched out the DNA in all of our cells, it would stretch 10 times the visible diameter of our galaxy.
Say that again. If you take all the DNA,
if you take all the DNA
cells,
in all of our cells, all of humanity, it's microscopic because it curls up. But if you stretched it out, the DNA in each of our cells is 2 meters long. When you take that by 8 billion people, it's 10 times the diameter of our Milky Way galaxy.
you know, you can't make this stuff up.
You couldn't make this stuff up. It is.
What do you make of our like materialist scientists who are there's all this junk DNA and it doesn't do anything? I mean, why would life produce junk DNA? I mean, what do you think?
To be honest, that term's not. That really has gone out of use. It's now called non-coding DNA. And it's still very much an open research, but at least people have got beyond the junkness of it to realize that it has meaning and purpose, and it's part of our evolutionary journey, and it may come into play depending on the requirements of evolutionary progress again, but none of it is junk. Also, you know, our DNA, who we are, is a community. It's not just human stuff. It's bacteria and it's viruses. Some of our most important biological processes are guided virally. You know, I mean, you couldn't make it up, Jim, as you say. It's just so extraordinary and wonderful.
Yeah.
That's why I wrote the story of Gaia, because I really wanted to invite people into this miracle.
Exactly.
This cosmic miracle that we're all part of.
Well, you know, one thing I'd love to have you comment as we bring this to a close, Jude, is water. Because we've been doing a lot of work with Veda Austin, who's been discovering unbelievable things about water. As you know, it's a portal, it communicates, is capable of articulating itself into language, that what she calls hydroglyphs. And you're saying that they're now finding that water is everywhere. So speak to us about the relationship between water and life, as you understand it.
Okay. How long have we got? Right. Okay. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. First of all, the hydrogen in our bodies and the waters of Gaia, as the film said, is only minutes younger than the entire universe. Okay. The oxygen in the water then was formed in stars hundreds of millions and billions of years later, but the hydrogen was there from the very get-go. So when we come to the interstellar molecular clouds of hydrogen that are the birthplaces of planetary systems, water ice is replete, but it's vitally, and I'd love her take on this, it's not crystalline, because crystalline ice would destroy the delicate organic chemistry that it was that it was nurturing. So these are like dust crystals, little dust motes with ice motes as seed points for biological emergence. And then every aspect of carbon biology requires water. And its characteristics are extraordinary. And we don't have anywhere the time to go into that, but I would love to have a whole session on this. And we know now that
What
there's
about if we get you on with Veda Austin?
I'd love to. I'd love
That would
to.
be incredible.
Because,
I'll
there's
put that together.
Okay, because, we're now discovering a new phase of water that's critical to biological
plasma.
life. It's not just plasma, but it is a phase. It's called AX water. We can talk about it when we set it up, but it's not plasma per se. That's plasma is a fourth phase of material. So we have gas, liquid, solid, and plasma. What I'm talking about is a fourth phase of water that actually is a way of being able to resonate through biological systems.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to connect you and Jude. We're going to do a whole session on cosmic implications of water.
I love that.
In fact, she's going to be in Chartres, July 6th
Excellent.
through 12th in July.
Brilliant.
And if you happen to be in the neighborhood and want to drop by, she'll be there for our 7-day pilgrimage, and it would be an incredible. We're also having Bertie Jaworski there, the remote viewer, and she remote views through water.
Terrific.
I mean,
terrific.
and
You're going to have a lot of fun. I would love to be there. I don't think I can be, but my goodness, you guys are going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, both of you. This has been just a sensational program today. I'm deeply appreciative, and I hope Jude, Peter, you can join the after chat for a few minutes. You'll see the link
I'd be happy
in the chat
to.
box, and then you receive the link in your Zoom reminders for today. And then tomorrow, everyone, we're going to have a journey into ancient Egypt with a woman who has been living in Egypt for decades and has found the most potent sites in Egypt for ET communication.
Oh, okay.
So that's Tracy Ashi tomorrow on Humanity Rising. But Jude, you're so brilliant. I just want to say, this is like the cosmology is becoming intimate to our times. And you're one of the people that have brought it in. And I just want to acknowledge your deep commitment, because when you started this process, nobody cared about cosmology.
No, they didn't.
And it was considered woo-woo. And now it's the most important thing that humanity needs to understand. And you are our great mentor. So I just want to acknowledge that on behalf of all of us here at Humanity Rising. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And thank you, Peter. This is
wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Looking forward to the after chat.
Thank you, everybody. See you in the after chat. Bye.